Google might have just ended the ability for you to share passwords and get access to different accounts. Because what I'm about to show you is a new thing that Google is releasing that is almost like DRM, but for your cookies. Now I know it sounds complicated and there is a lot to break through, so let's get into it. So there's a blog post from Google from April 9th, which apparently not a lot of people are talking about for some reason, which is protecting cookies with device-bound session credentials. So they're calling this as DBSC as a feature. And this is also not something which is new, right? This is just getting released now publicly. So that's what they're saying, that it's entering public availability for Windows and Mac. But this is super interesting stuff. So I'm gonna actually give you a walkthrough of what this TPM, all of this is. And this also actually is very relevant to the DRM video that I did some months back. So if you want a full breakdown of how DRM works, which is digital rights management for video content, I would link the video somewhere here so you can check that out. It's actually a very interesting video, something that I did a very long time back. But I want you to think of this DBSC, device-based session credentials, as something which sort of is like DRM for cookies. Now, before that, let's actually understand what happens when you log in into a website, right? Let's say that this is you. Let's say you're trying to visit bank.com and you enter your username as Mehul and password as Mehul123. Your bank does some additional verification, could be a two-factor authentication or anything. But the core idea is that once the bank is satisfied that you are indeed who you are saying that you are, it'll give you a header called set cookie and then some cookie value, right? Now this could be slightly different depending on, bank to bank. I don't know, if every bank uses cookies or some use local storage and then use, backend APIs on a different domain. But the core idea is, let's assume that they are setting cookies on your browser, right? So they'll return you this header, set cookie, and these cookies are basically an identifier, right? So this is an ID that tells you that, okay, whenever the next request comes in, right? So you are over here as a client. So let's say now you visit payments tab, you want to make a payments, right? The bank does not want you to keep on logging in again and again, right? So your browser, what it will do is that it's going to send this cookie thing again. And server uses this because they have stored this cookie ideally inside a sessions table somewhere that, okay, this cookie maps to this user, right? So they are automatically able to get access to your session, right? Now this is all fun and good, but the problem happens is that what if I take this cookie, whatever the arbitrary value, random value that the bank gave me, and I use that exact same cookie on a different computer, right? Now the problem is that bank will still give me back a legit response, even though I'm not using the same device as intended. Now the idea here is that, for example, let's say this user had some sort of malware or something that allowed an attacker to steal these cookies from a website. Or, this user itself is sort of let's say mischievous, and this client is actually accessing a website like Netflix and it's trying to do password sharing, but instead of sharing the password, it actually sends the other guy his cookies, right? So Netflix on their backend is technically seeing just a single session, right? So Netflix is seeing that the active session is just one because Netflix has technically only issued one cookie for this user, but that cookie is being used by two clients, two people over here, right? Which defeats the whole purpose of them restricting or doing the password sharing part. I think Netflix is a better example here, not the bank part. But again, the core idea is same because this also prevents the malware parts, right? For example, somebody hacking your cookies somehow or just stealing your session somehow because of a vulnerability in your system or in the website itself somehow. So this attack vector is possible. It's possible even today. Even right now, you can do Netflix-based password sharing. I'm not asking you to do this, but this is a possibility that you log in into one account and instead of sharing the password again to somebody else, you can share your cookies instead. And this access pattern would have much less restrictions, right? Because if you look at platforms like Netflix, for example, when you log in, they might check your login IP, they might check your user agent, they might check your, I don't know, if they do it or not, but they can technically check your screen resolution and fingerprinting your device in order to make sure that, you are actually who you say you are. And of course, they would also check login limits, right? For example, some plans might have higher amount of login limits. All of this Netflix would only do at the time when you are logging in for the first time, right? Once your login is successful and once Netflix issues you cookies back, every single time now when you send the cookies back to the Netflix server, it is very highly likely that they would skip a lot of these checks. Now a platform like Netflix could technically still check for IP address match and user agent match and so on, but it's just a waste of server bandwidth because most people, like 99% people, are not doing the sort of stuff that we are talking about. And it doesn't make sense for a lot of CPU wasted only for addressing that 1% or that 0.1% people. All right, so now that we are clear on how server-client interaction, the cookies one work, in order to understand what Google has released in the blog post, it's very simple. Imagine that the same flow is happening even right now, right? Let's say you have a client and let's say you have a server over here. Now your client here is Google Chrome, right? So Google Chrome is shipping this feature, which is what we are calling as device-bound session credentials, right? Now with this feature, what happens is that let's say client enters Mehul123, Netflix gives me back key to set cookie, right? But this cookie itself is only valid for let's say 10 minutes, right? It's not valid for 1 month or something. So it's valid for let's say 5 to 10 minutes of time. That's it. Awesome. So far so good. So I'm just gonna go ahead and browse the website normally. So I'm gonna visit let's say my favorite shows. Maybe I'm also watching a video or something. So a playback is running and Netflix in the background is refreshing, downloading more of the video and so on and so forth. And let's say now we are at a time where 5 minutes are over, right? So that cookie has expired. So now, of course, your client cannot just go back to server because server will say back unauthorized, right? It will just deny its request. So what Google Chrome does here is that it comes in and say that, okay, this server had something known as this DBSC enabled, right? Data device bound session credentials, right? So what Google Chrome will say that, okay, hold on a minute, because we are running a DBSC session, I'm going to go ahead and call a different endpoint first on the same server, right? So the server is still owned by you, but it's going to be a refresh endpoint, right? And your server is going to give back the cookie this time to this device, right? Because this is a legit device. And now, once you have the updated cookie, then Google Chrome is going to make the same request, right? Whatever you were saying, for example, profile, let's say. So what Chrome did apparently is that it intercepted your request. It did not run it through yet because it saw that the 5 to 10 minute timer is up and the cookie has been expired. It's going to refresh your cookie manually by calling a server endpoint, which is again owned by you. Your server returns the cookie and then Google Chrome sends the request, which initially the client wanted to send, right? The /profile one. Now you might think that how is this secure? Because what Google Chrome is doing over here, why can't this be copied onto another device? And for that, we have to understand what happens when you log in for the first time in a DBSC based login system. So the trick here is that instead of just specifying your username and password, your client, which is Google Chrome, is also going to send public key here, right? Now, I don't want to make it super complicated and, super math stuff video, but let me give you a quick idea about how this public private key stuff works. So public private key stuff is basically, if I simply explain it, think of a lock here, right? Let's say this is a lock that is there. Imagine that there are two sets of keys here. This is a private key, the green one that I have, and this blue one, or whatever this color is, it's sort of like a public key. So a public key is something that you give to everyone on the internet, right? And the private key is something that you keep with yourself over here, in your computer. So this private key actually never leaves your system, which is your computer over here, which is the client. And the public key is something that you send over to the server itself, right? And this public key is nothing but, imagine like these two things as very large numbers, right? Let's say for the sake of simplicity. So the server knows your user ID, password, and it also knows your public. Now the system that we have, this public private system, and the lock that we have is that this is sort of a special lock, which is made in such a way that public key can always open this lock, right? So this key that you have over here, this key can always open this lock, but it cannot close the lock, right? I'm just giving you an analogy. This is not how exactly it works. What I'm trying to say is that it can do one part, but not the other part. Private key, on the other hand, is the one that can close the lock, right? So the idea is that if you lock something, you can technically verify with the public key itself that yes, this was indeed locked by this specific client because only this client has the private key, but you can't lock it. So you can't do it on the behalf of client itself. Only the client is capable enough or is mathematically eligible to put a lock on something. Public key can be used to verify that yes, this has been done by the client itself, but it cannot do it on their behalf, right? So this is a security mechanism which is very popular, and something like this happens over here, right? So when you send your public key over here, it has an associated private key inside the client. So what happens technically, the reason this cannot be done by an attacker or somebody who's mischievous is when the server is trying to return the cookie cookie to you, before it does that, it actually asks you for a challenge. It asks you for a challenge that, hey, first of all, prove me that you are the same device for which I have this public key for, right? And the only way that you can pass this is if you also have the same private key over here that we discussed. Because if this is something else, if this is a different browser, that browser would not have the same private key and it will fail this challenge, right? So it will fail the challenge and it will not have, the server would say that, okay, I'm not able to verify it with my public key that you had sent me the first time you logged in. Therefore, I want you to just go ahead and log in again. So it will just fail your refresh attempt and it will push you to the login page. Now you might again ask that what is stopping me from stealing this private key, right? And the thing is that every computer, or at least like a lot of computers over here, come with these environments like TPM. So now if we go back to this blog post, you're going to see that we were seeing these words like trusted platform module, TPM on Windows, and secure enclave on Mac OS. So these are sort of systems which are there, which keep your secrets, which keep your stuff safe. So this private key is not inside your web browser's JavaScript context or anything that any code can read. It's actually sitting inside secure enclaves created by your operating systems, right? Whether that's Windows, whether that's Mac OS, whether that's a bunch of things. Now, the solution that Google is implementing, obviously it restricts you to share passwords or cookies and access a website directly, but sharing is not always bad. In fact, it is something that we actually recommend if you're working in a team where you have to share your knowledge base, where you have to bring all sorts of documentation, infrastructure pieces, everything that you can possibly link together in a single place, and then you can query it, the whole team. And if you're somebody who's working as a developer, as somebody in a company, take a look at ServeSense. Now, ServeSense is a platform which is a notebook LM for teams. So if you're working with teams, which has a very high chance if you're employed, then this is something that you can incorporate in your day-to-day workflows. It's a free open source notebook LM alternative for teams with no data limits. And I say this is free because you will see that they have a GitHub link over here, which you can use to deploy ServeSense on your own as well. They do offer a cloud-based offering over here, which I can show you on how it works. So what I did earlier is that I added my documentation website of my website as one of the connectors here, which could be one of many other connectors. For example, you can add YouTube videos as connectors. You can add your inbox, Notion, Linear, anything that you are using inside your company as connectors to ServeSense, which helps it crawl the data that you have. This probably includes everything that you use as a company, but if you don't have a connector here, just let the support team know and they will introduce that. Once you have the connectors here, you will be able to mention them using the @ symbol. For example, let's say if I ask it about what is Fermion, it will be able to answer me directly based on its knowledge, its internal knowledge that it has built through all the connectors that I have given it. So you can see that these answers are actually coming out of not LLM or internet search, but it's coming out from the connectors that it has access to, the data, the real data it has access to. And the good part is that it also gives us sources, right? So it's not something that is just hallucinating something up. It actually gives me the chunk from where it is reading that specific thing. So for example, if I start a new chat, you're going to see that there are a bunch of other things as well which you can do, and you can enable and disable internet as well in order to enhance the answers. I can ask it, how does live streaming work? I am running into some errors in Node.js. Right? So this becomes like a very personalized system that has access to every single tool in your organization, and it can ingest any amount of data. It can update on the fly. So if your documentation or resources are getting updated, it can automatically get refreshed. And most importantly, it also gives you sources of where that information is coming from. So do check out ServeSense. It's free to start with, and you can also deploy it on your own because it's open source, but you can also try their managed cloud offering, which is a pretty sweet way of getting started with ServeSense without doing all the setup yourself. All the links are in the description. Once again, thanks to ServeSense for sponsoring this part of the video. And now back to the video. Now, technically this TPM is also the place. I mean, not exactly, this is not the place. What we call that place is TEE, Trusted Execution Environment, which is the place where DRM decoding happens, or rather I should say decryption, because that content is basically encrypted. So that is why I mentioned it earlier, like this sounds a lot more like DRM, because even in DRM, your video, all the video content, everything encrypted comes into this place, and this is the place that actually decrypts it and then sends it to your monitor directly, right? And you have the control to, even disable, for example, HDMI based playbacks and so on. I covered that in the video that I linked earlier, so do check it out. But the core idea is that this private key is very hard to take out of this TPM, right? You can't generally take it out until and unless you have like, pseudo access or full system compromises has happened, right? With some malware. And again, like if that has happened, then yes, this is not really secure, because you can like, if you have full level computer access, then you can still take out this private key and then put it on the different device and still use the same cookies. But I mean, like if you have your fully compromised system at your hands, I think you have bigger problems to solve than protecting this one single Netflix session, right? But yeah, this is what Google Chrome is introducing, and this is more of a protocol, right? So DBSC is a protocol. Google is also trying to standardize this. So anyone, like for example, on Windows, they're using TPM. On Mac OS, they're using something else, like a keychain-like thing, secure enclave. On Linux, they could use something else. So basically, this is a system that allows you to do what I just showed you, but in this cookie exchange in a secure manner. So that's all for this video. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna see you in the next video very soon. If you're still watching, make sure you leave a comment, "I watched till the end" below to tell me that you were still here, and let me know what do you think about the video.